Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Nick Dixon, and thank you for tuning in again. Last week we had one of our biggest ever episodes. I think so far it's our second most downloaded on audio. It might end up being the most downloaded, and that was Academic Agent. He was very good. So any new fans, welcome to the show. We will have other guests from time to time, but what we like to sometimes do is just do a topical episode with young Rory, Zoomer Rory, Rory Jacobs, friend of the podcast from the Radical English Gentleman, and just go over recent topics in the news and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing today. Welcome once again, Rory.
Well, pleasure to be here again. Thanks for the amazing opportunity. And as I say every time, thanks for all the amazing supporters who came over to my podcast. I meant a lot. But it's funny because I did a recent episode where I spoke about a different issue and a bunch of people unfollowed and stuff, but that's what it's about.
Why did they unfollow? What was the issue?
It's because I spoke about Islamophobia, and then obviously people think I'm some sort of like woke idiot. And I also apologise for being sexist in your episode.
Really?
As well. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know you were doing that. I wouldn't have had you back. So you go behind my back and do secret sort of gay apology episodes.
Well, I just said sorry because like I felt I was a bit sexist the way I spoke about the Girls Gone Bible. I thought I was like, I don't know, I thought it was degrading of women a bit. I know
If
people
we can't
listening will
degrade
hate
women
me.
on this podcast, where can we? That's what I'm going to say. Where
Well,
else is there in the culture to be misogynist if not this podcast?
I'm
We're driven
not
off everything
misogyny.
else. The straight white men we have to make our own little podcast. If we can't be misogynist here, Rory, what did you say about the Girls Gone Bible?
I just said like the way I spoke about them. I was like, I just thought I was sexist.
Maybe they deserved it.
Nah, they didn't. Even though I don't like a lot of the stuff they come out with, I felt like I was I was almost angry at them for no reason. Yeah.
Well, the reason was they were annoying and stupid.
Well, looking back on it though, I looked at the video again and I was like, nah.
I don't even remember what they said. I'm just like guessing. What were they talking about? I can't remember.
They were talking about the how that like preferences for a man about being ex-basketball player.
Oh yeah, they wanted an ex-NBA player who was dedicated to Christ, but 6'6" or something. Somehow loves the Bible, but also loves this girl, and they had a completely unrealistic expectation of a man that they just completely made up and doesn't exist. That's what it was annoying about. For
Yeah, but I felt like it was just I was just being angry for no reason because it's like I don't know, I'm not going to blame them for kind of having preferences almost, but I came across as I was angry.
And you're quite tall as well, so it wasn't like height-related anger. You're definitely over 6 foot, so it was not height anger. It was just, was it Christian righteous anger?
Yeah, it was anger towards like just immature view of. It was about their overall podcast of how they're immature. They have such a. I said the word immature again. Immature view of Christianity and this black and white arrogance about how they view the Bible and life, and like, you know, just do this, everything will be fine. It's like, no, it won't. That what pissed me off, and I based that on my criticisms of them talking about men, which is a bit like.
Well, when you're getting called immature by a Zoomer, you know you're in trouble. I mean, so what? Okay, so you've apologized for that on your own podcast. Who knows what else you're saying behind our backs on your other podcast? Just disavowing us. And what about your Lent? How's that going? Just a quick update.
Well, good question. It's going terribly. To be fair, I said I wouldn't go on social media. I've been going on every day. Yeah, done absolutely pathetic, really, with keeping to it
Every day.
Yeah.
Well, I've absolutely crushed mine. I mean, you see, this is a different caliber of person you're dealing with. 0 Coke Zeros the whole time. Now, I used to drink multiple cans a day, basically chain canning Coke Zero. What's the phrase for like chain smoking, but with Coke Zeros? Whatever that was, I was just doing that all day, every day, before headliners on GB News, just so I could stay awake for that. I basically get up, start drinking Coke Zero, and do that until, you know, if I'm on headliners, I do that literally till 11 p.m. If I'm not, I might stop at a more reasonable hour. But that was my life, and I've cut it out completely and haven't had a single one. Now, full confession, while we're doing it, someone said to me, I think it's Sunday now, actually. Someone said to me, on a Sunday, you're allowed to take a break from Lent. That's how it works. It's 6 days, and then for some reason, the Sunday is an exception. So then I did on Sunday have a normal Coke, because someone said to me, well, you can have normal Coke then. And I was like, can you have normal Coke? So technically on a Sunday, many people would say I would be able to have Coke Zero even in Lent. So what I've done is have an occasional normal Coke. So I don't know. So that full disclosure, I've kept to my Coke Zero thing, but occasionally a normal Coke because of this Sunday loophole.
So
So
what
that
did you replace it with then? Right.
replace it with
Yeah, because
nothing.
like,
Just
you just drink
misery
water
and
now?
headaches.
Just
Just
water.
tiredness. Yeah, water. Yeah.
No, you got to get into herbal teas. Herbal teas are brilliant. Like,
Yeah, I just occasionally, no, nothing, just water, and occasionally hot water when I had warm water because I had a sore throat and a cold. But I just was like, that was it, mate. I mean, that's hardcore though. I can't. Once I say like I'm not gonna have a Coke Zero for Lent, and I've still got two in my fridge from pre-Lent. I look at them, I just look at them, and then shut the fridge. This is another level of willpower dealing with here. But to me, the fact that I've even had some normal Cokes on a Sunday already makes me a kind of a pussy. But the level I'm dealing with here of just failing every day, my equivalent to yours would just be drinking a Coke Zero every day.
yeah, I mean, it is impressive you kept
I
up.
feel bad now. I feel like I've hammered you too hard on this.
No. You're right. I love criticism, and to all your people out there who hate me and tweet at me and all that, like, keep it coming. I don't mind. Like, there's loads. I'm a fucking moron. Like, please do insult me. Like, I can handle insults.
He likes self-flagellation more. He's an old school Christian, likes to be flagellated.
Flagellate. What does that
It's not
mean?
really self-flagellation, actually, if they're flagellating you. Flagellating is to whip someone, but self-flagellating comes from when those people used to whip
Oh,
themselves as a
okay.
kind of sort of medieval Christian thing,
Yeah, yeah. No,
or
I mean,
whenever it
yeah,
was.
because I think it's healthy, kind of just dissolve the ego and like, I wouldn't say I'm an egotistical person, but any kind of criticism that can dissolve that, I think is good for me to hear because it keeps me in check and doesn't make me like think I'm the shit. I'm gonna be so woke, right? Oh my goodness, I'm gonna be so. I just it seemed like you're being a little bit homophobic when you said at the start. You said people are gonna absolutely rip into me even say this when you said that was so gay of me.
Mm-hmm. Well, why is it being homophobic? You're not gay, are you?
No, but as in, but you're using that as a negative connotation.
That we've put. Have you not seen this, Roy? We've put gay back on the table
Right.
as an insult. Have you not noticed this on the internet yet? It's
Yeah, I know
back.
some people do it. It's just like if you're gay out there and you hear that and the word gay is connotated with negativity, then you might kind of hate yourself a bit more if people are using the word as a negative thing constantly, if you know what I mean.
Wow. You'd think I
Yeah.
thought this was the one podcast where we were free from gay shit like that. I work with gay people every day, like Andrew Dorr, and they don't care about such trifles and understand that it's banter. And obviously, your generation is like hopelessly woke and cares about being called being gay. Everyone was called gay when I was called gay because I read a book at school. Then it went away for a while, and now it's back. But no one thinks it actually means anything to do with
Yeah.
being gay.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, I agree with you. Like, I know loads of people who say that's gay or whatever and stuff. I was just saying, like, personally, I'm being really woke here.
The terrible thing when you're on someone's podcast who's let you on their podcast and you're meant to be like having like banter with them, and then you go, "Oh, can I just stop you because of the word you said?" That's not moral. That's actually being a dick. Not this fucking gay. Like, there's no gay person here. That's actually rude, and that's actually not moral in my book. If I'm trying to talk to someone, we have an established relationship, then they suddenly have to call me out for something. I
Yeah.
go, "Well, fuck off then, because you don't understand our relationship, which is based on banter." And you've then had to play this card of like, can I just say I'm distancing myself from this person? Why is that moral?
Yeah. No, that is a very good point. I guess the reason I was said it was because I'm more cautious now of my perceptions because I used to be a lot more bombastic with what I said and people put me in a box. And people still do, but I guess when I'm going your show, I'm trying to be a bit more careful, which seems ludicrous and seems woke. And then I get what you mean. You're kind of breaking what comedy is and banter. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty pathetic of me to say that, but I just felt
You're
like I
saying it
had
because you're
to.
worried. My guess is you're worried about your peer group who are all woke Zoomers.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's more me. Like, when you said that, I was thinking about, oh, what if someone was gay and they were listening,
We've
and then I
got
was
gay
like,
listeners. They don't care.
yeah,
They tweet me
all
and
right,
stuff. They don't
all right,
care
well,
about
fair
it.
enough. Yeah, no, you're right. You're
And if
right.
they do, then they should stop being gay.
Yeah. No, you are right. Yeah, fair enough. Apologize for my comment. I made a stupid, woke, progressive,
See, now you're apologizing for
nonsensical
that.
argument.
You're lost, Rory, in a world of what's happened to you. You see, you've lost confidence. You've lost confidence in your views. You're apologizing for things you've said on this podcast, on the other podcast. Now you're telling me off. Now you're apologizing for that. Where's your confidence gone? What's happened?
Well, certain things are more kind of I'm balancing between having saying things, but also having the humility to say I'm wrong, but also saying things when you know it's true or right. And yeah, I guess I'm thinking about a lot of things recently. Like everyone
Okay.
is, not a unique thing. I'm thinking, oh, who's not thinking? Like,
The
yeah.
problem is with this, we're going to lose all our new fans from the last
Mm.
podcast, which is like because we had academic agent on who's about as base as it gets, and now they're going to be like, "Why am I listening to this woke shit with Rory?" So you're going to lose us all our new audience. And the problem is that I didn't have another based guest booked, so I thought bring Rory on. He's sometimes based,
Mm.
but I didn't know you were going to go full woke on us at the start of the
Yeah.
episode. So it's quite interesting because we get the debate, we get to see what the woke Zoomers are thinking, and a lot of people tweet and they more message on the YouTube and say, "I despair for the future if this is the least woke kid." Have you seen? Some people like you, but some people say things like that.
Oh
Bit
yeah.
harsh.
Yeah, people do hate me. Fair enough. Like
But you're the least woke Zoomer.
yeah, like I'm like far right in my circles. Like I'm like a nutter in where I live. Like people think I'm nuts. Like actually insane. Like so.
That shows how lost we are because you're
Yeah.
like a sort of left libertarian, and then your group thinks you're far right, but you're tiptoeing around worrying about you've offended some stupid girl, and then you're worried about the word gay, and then you're worried, and you're also massively pro-Palestine. I'm struggling to see you're massively pro-immigration, or you've changed a little bit on that, but I'm struggling to see where you're even vaguely right-wing at this point. Is it
I'm
your
right wing. I'm
haircut?
culturally like I'm super anti-abortion, pro-marriage. I'm nationalistic. Well, maybe not Nick's standard nationalistic, but I would say I'm a nationalistic person. I like tradition. I like decorum, elegance. I like uh, I like to support folks on Britain. I'm not pro-Palestine. Well, I am pro-Palestine, but I'm more anti-death. I'm not really
You
like.
could be pro-Palestine, but you're saying it comes from more extreme social conservatism. So even if I'm going to be generous, even your concerns about gay or things that we've said about women, you're just very concerned about social decorum. You're one of these ultra socially conservative Zoomers who's a
Mm,
Christian, and you're worried about all that. The problem with that is it's you can be like that because I'm from the start of millennial and just after Generation X. My mentality is much more Gen X, so we don't care about all that stuff you care about, and we're always going to be like we're always going to make jokes and be a bit cynical, and that's fine. You can be much more sort of puritanical. We'll never totally be like that, but you can be like that if you want.
mm.
Just not on my podcast, but you can do what you want in your own time. All right, interesting. What about this? I've also wanted to ask you about this George Galloway thing because you had a kind of unique view on the ground. You were there in amongst it at the Galloway campaign in Rochdale. Is that right? Or you weren't with the Galloway campaign, but you were near to it.
Yeah, so I was on the ground in Rochdale getting people out to vote because we were just trying to make sure people more engaged. And in all fairness, there was actually a little bit more political engagement with voting than compared to other places, even though a lot of them were postal votes. I think there was, I'm not sure how many people, but it was a bit more than Kingswood. Kingswood was like 30,000 or something. And yeah, we went round in a car getting people out to vote, leaflets, all that. And interesting, I saw so Rishi spoke about intimidation, and there was a lot of intimidation with the Reform candidate. People said they want to like shoot him pretty much or put £2 in him. I can't even remember what they said specifically. And then you had also Reform campaigners had to move because of their own safety, and I think you had a candidate drop out. And I did see actually when people were voting, I saw there were people literally stood outside the door of where people vote kind of coming up to people, handing out leaflets with pro-Palestine stickers and stuff. Now, I don't have a problem with people talking about that because I think it's awful what's happening in Gaza, but that's complete intimidation. Like I saw a woman just get approached by two men as she was about to vote, like just walking up kind of this tiny little stairs to vote. So there is a serious problem of what actually happened in Rochdale with intimidation. Like the fact that in Britain in 2024, like we had people who are standing in a democratic election terrified to do so. That's there we got a serious issue there. So when Rishi made his announcement, I did see that a bit, and also seeing Rochdale. I mean, I've never seen kind of a community more divided. Like I went to some parts, you wouldn't even see an English like calf. We went to this calf, right? It's quite fun. We actually spent hours looking for a toilet in Rochdale. We go there. We go to this. It says English cafe. Go in there. It sells kebabs, right? And then we were trying to get a tea. The tea was absolutely revolting. We go to the toilet. The toilet's broken. No soap. No toilet roll. Nothing. Then we go to another cafe. We look for a toilet out of order. We go to all these shops looking for a toilet. Ended up having to go to the station where the guy said the toilet's absolutely revolting. You want to go to the hospital. So I ended up having to go to Rochdale Hospital to go to the toilet. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. So, and is it true that I didn't follow it that closely, that the independent candidate got quite a lot of votes, but he basically got votes from sort of white people in Rochdale, and then Galloway got the Muslim vote. Is it that simple? Are people just breaking it down along ethnic lines now?
Yeah, so yeah, the guy was called Tully. There was loads of people who liked him. He spoke about the grooming gangs, what happened there, and he was just, I think, a local businessman, or I'm not even sure. He might have even been like a Sparky or something. I'm not too sure, but he got 6,000 votes, I think, which is absolutely nuts. Bearing in mind he's a complete nobody, just some random bloke in Rochdale. He's got 6,000 votes, and yeah, I think he was appealing to the cultural divide in Rochdale because we when we arrived we went to a part of Rochdale and it is like unrecognizable. Like you can't find a single like English calf or anything. And there are on the outskirts there are nice parts and but it's a completely different world. Like it's a different community. It's like you go into a shop. Like it's not. I'm not talking on a racial identitarian level because I'm not a racist, but there is a serious thing. Like if you grew up in those areas, you would not feel welcome. You just would not feel welcome at all. And it was really sad, really, because the only place where there was actually kind of stuff going, maybe jobs, was places like a billion kebab shops or hairdressers. And it's like, what even is Rochdale, really? Like, it's unrecognizable.
Hmm. Yeah, shocking. So, especially the intimidation is shocking. But didn't you think Sunak's speech was pretty appalling? I destroyed the speech on X and in a quite popular post, and I did a Substack post expanding on that. And there was one quote where he said, "Islamist extremists and far right groups are spreading a poison. That poison is extremism," which I accused of being tautologist because he says extremism twice. But apart from that, it was so obvious that he had to try and wriggle out of any sort of accusations of being Islamophobic because he had to compare, he had to always make a false equivalence between Islamic extremism and the so-called far right. If you look at the stats, the terror watch list, 40 something thousand people on the terror watch list, 90% of them are Islamic extremists. It comes to just under 40,000 far right, so-called tiny threat in comparison. So why did he have to do that? Isn't it just because he couldn't address the real problem without looking like on PC or something. So he had to then attach far right to it every time.
Yeah. I think that's why he did it. But I also think that, like, it is true. Like, the far right is an issue in the UK. I don't think. I mean, would you deny that and say it's not an issue? Or
Well, I just look at the stats and say, well, one was two things. One, we know that the term's been massively abused, so that everyone and their gran is far right. We know that Prevent were looking into Jacob Rees-Mogg, Shakespeare, and things like this, and Tolkien, I think. And we know that the stats suggest that it's a tiny percentage threat compared to, as I've just said, 90%. So therefore, how can you put it in the same sentence every time? Especially when that speech was about the thing that you've alluded to, which was Islamic extremists threatening people, specifically threatening the MPs around that vote when the speaker, which we discussed, changed protocol. Maybe it was Paul. I discussed that with Paul Cox, but the speaker changed protocol and he said it was to defend MPs from danger, essentially, because of Islamic people, extremists threatening them, or people in the pro-Palestine movement threatening them. So why then did this speech go on about the far right? I mean, he made reference to Nick Griffin, which was totally bizarre, just because he defended George Galloway. It was very, very tenuous. That wasn't the only thing wrong with the speech. The whole speech was awful. But that was something that stood out to me and many other people, and they just basically said F off at this point, because this was about, you can talk about the far right if you want, but this was about something else.
yeah, well, you got a good point in the what's the real issue. The real issue is Islamic extremism, not far right. But I would say there's been a move of mainstream extremism. People are going to absolutely hate everything I'm saying here, but like even with Zuella Braveman, her rhetoric, or Lee Anderson, there's a clear move in what's like palatable for people. anymore. Like the idea of multiculturalism being a bad idea or bad thing that's happened, or Lee Anderson saying fuck off back home, um, like that would be like that'd be a national scandal, and people would be
What did
non.
Lee Anderson say about? He didn't
He
say
said he
back
said
home, did he?
on I think he said on Twitter on a post he said some response and he said, well, if you don't like it, you can fuck off back home. Um, which is a people would say, well, he's just saying if people don't like Britain, they can go home, and you could make that argument, but to do it in that way is is what a lot of racist people do, and like I know people listening will kind of hate everything I'm saying there because it's kind of the opposite, but I will say it anyway because I do think that while Islamic extremism is a serious issue and there's a massive cultural divide that's bubbling, and I think a lot of people are becoming wary to that. Me going to Rochdale, I saw that. I saw how that is not integration. There's also the issue of far right extremism where you're getting this new breed of identitarianism of um, hate, the spreading of hatred of the other, of fear, and some of that fear is valid. Things like grooming gangs that really happened, and there's a lot of trauma in people's mind from stuff like that. But there's also kind of having a more nuanced take on it. There's also is an issue with extremism, and it's disturbing when you see rhetoric more and more normalized, like to do with immigration. I would say.
Well, I don't know about that specific instance. I'm looking it up now, and he might have said "f off" back to France, which of course is different because if it's France, you're allowed to have a pop.
Right.
But I'm not sure what he said there, so I don't want to comment. But basically, you're trying to have your cake and eat it because you're admitting there's a problem. You've been in Rochdale, you've seen that whether you want to call it multiculturalism has failed, and I always try and head off any criticism of that, like this guy Hugo Rifkin who said, "Well, that's what multiculturalism means, different cultures." So really, what you're saying is multiculturalism is a bad idea because multiculturalism means maintaining. Most people officially in the definition think it means maintaining autonomous cultures. So really, you should say multiculturalism is a bad idea, or assimilation and integration are better than multiculturalism. But most people think multiculturalism means assimilation. They kind of mix the terms up. So they just say multiculturalism has failed, or we've got a multicultural society. They just think it means multi-ethnic. They use all these terms interchangeably: assimilation, multi-ethnic, integration. Multiculturalism means maintaining separate autonomous cultures within the whole, which is what we have. So it's just a bad idea, period. It's not even failed, it's just a bad idea, period. But so what you're saying is you've been there and you've seen that. You've seen that it doesn't work and that it's bad and that it's not healthy for a society. And then at the same time, you're saying, but I don't want people to, call it out. I mean,
No,
maybe it's the language that you're objecting to. That you're saying the way they do it. I mean, Swell hasn't said anything bad if you ask me. Anderson's a bit more rough and ready, but someone's got to call it out. I mean, in
yeah,
fact,
but
you are right that that's now on the table. The idea that multiculturalism is bad or has failed is an idea that wasn't on the table before. But it's inevitable, isn't it? When it's so obvious, some people are going to start saying it.
yeah, well, I'm having a nuanced opinion of it. I'm saying it's an issue, and like, my view on multiculturalism would be a bit different. I think cultures can go inside of each other. It's just how that goes about is question. How quick does that happen, and what's kind of the democratic consent of that of people? So, for instance, like the UK, people want less immigration every year, but it doesn't seem to happen, and it still isn't happening. And there's an issue there because things are happening that people don't want to democratically happen, but no one's kind of speaking up, and the people are speaking up because our political system's gridlocked with third party system. Nothing can happen. But it's also it's not a binary, like it's not black and white. Like well, this is my view anyway. Like most cultures can be a bad thing, or like we got too many immigrants, or we got all these crises, so therefore we can't talk about the far right or hate, or we can't talk about any of that. I would say you can talk about all of it. There's no one should box themselves in to be like, oh, I'm this side, this is an issue, so therefore I'm not going to talk about the other. My view is always you talk about everything, and that's why a lot of people hate me and my podcast because I don't fit in the box with it. I don't like, oh, there's an issue with integration and immigration in the UK. I agree, but I also am not afraid to talk about the other stuff. But people hate that because then there's nuance, because then it's not black and white, because that's not simplistic.
No, people hate you because you say you shouldn't say gay as an obvious joke at the start of a podcast. That's why they hate you. Yeah, you can have a nuanced view. That's fine. I mean, that seems all reasonable what you said there. What about this other story? I'm sure we're going to get in trouble here as well. This Met Police arrested this man carrying so he's called Niak Gorbani, Hopefully that's something like the pronunciation. And he had this sign, Hamas is terrorists, because his English is not perfect, but he was basically saying Hamas are terrorists. He's holding up this sign. The police seem to have, well, they did arrest him. And people saying, hang on, is he just being arrested for a factual sign? And the police, Met Police, this is, of course, put out their statement saying, a video, let me just get this the right way around. A video has been posted on X alleging officers arrested a man for having an anti Hamas placard. This isn't accurate. He was arrested after an altercation was ongoing and officers intervened to prevent a breach of the peace. He was arrested for assault. Officers then fully reviewed footage provided of the incident and he was later de arrested. The arrest was not made in relation to the placard. This is a fascinating thing. So we now have de arrests. So I said to them, and this has got 2.5 thousand likes, so some people agree. You should just arrest all innocent people as standard procedure, then de-arrest us later if you don't manage to make up some crime we've committed. That is basically what you do anyway at this point. And then some people have argued to me, oh, this is just procedure. This is just to protect someone. And I've said in response to that, when you're arresting the guy not doing anything because of an angry mob that might beat him up, you have lost the plot. When you are saying that this is for his own protection, you've lost control of your society because he's not actually doing anything. Yeah, he's standing there with a sign that they're not going to like, but they are the potentially violent mob. So if they start attacking him, you arrest them. You don't arrest the guy for his own protection or arrest him and review the footage later and de-arrest him. And by the way, the police were rough with him. So why are they attacking him? And they took his placard, which they have no right to do, according to some lawyers either. So what's going on here, Rory?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's completely nuts. Like the fact that they're arresting him when they should be doing everything to defend his right to speak. And I will say that, regardless of your view, people can call me a woke, whatever, but I will defend anybody's view. And within it, though, I do find it funny some of these right wingers coming out speaking about, like, oh, isn't it awful this guy get arrested? But then they won't talk about Palestine people getting arrested. They won't talk about some guy with like some Hamas, let's say a pro Hamas placard, right? People get arrested for that. I think that should be allowed. I think you should be able to do that. And it all goes down to the principles of freedom of speech. If people don't defend pro Hamas people or pro Palestine people from right to protest, then you're going to have these ludicrous instances like this where a guy has some standard sign, is getting arrested, and he's not being defended. When everyone should be defended who's speaking, and anyone who's violent should be arrested. That should how it should be. But it's
Yeah, well, I question
yeah,
the pro Hamas sign because they're a terrorist organization listed. That's been the case since 2001, I think, in this country. So if you're just openly pro-terrorist in the street, I do think there may be a line there. Pro-Palestine is very different. You think there's no line. You think you should just be openly pro-Hamas in the street
yeah.
as
So
well.
right. So what would you arrest? Let's say there was, I don't know, the KKK or the BNP or some like. Would you say they should have the right to protest, or like have a sign endorsing them? Because under many, like many governments classifies those type of organisations as terrorist organisations. So should they have the right or not?
It's a good question. And I tend to think, I mean, with specific examples, I don't know because I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, the KKK.
It's
I'm not
American,
sure
yeah,
that.
but
I mean, they're American and they're Democrats, and that's there's a whole history about that. But you should be. I mean, Did you say the BNP? I mean, they were just a political party, weren't they? So you should be able to have a sign supporting them.
yeah, but there's I'm trying to think
But
of
you're trying to think of a
a
far right group
Britain
that's listed as
first or
terrorists.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah, well, there is definitely a danger that if the police designated people who aren't strictly terrorists as terrorists, they could just do that. Of course, there is the danger. I'm saying, see, it's all tricky with my argument because my argument is basically that at this point we don't have free speech. What we have is a liberal ruling elite that does everything it can to maintain the liberal order. So, liberalism and democracy are often at odds, and liberalism and free speech are often at odds. So, you have this paradox where the liberals, so-called liberal system, has to defend itself by cracking down on democracy and freedom. One classic example is Brexit. They eventually let it get through, but they didn't want to. What other examples? The IFD in Germany, they're trying to shut down. Liberalism often has to shut down minorities or certain opinions that it doesn't like. It's also against the people in all sorts of ways, like the death penalty. I always like to bring up because that was pushed through by radical leftists in the 60s. And now everyone's got used to it and accepts it and says, oh, no, I'm not sure the state should kill people. This is not the view of the British people. The view of the British people is pro death penalty in certain instances. So what you have is an elite that's socially to the left of most people and economically to the right of most people, and they try and maintain their views. So there is a valid point there that what is the limit to that? Because they will do anything they can to defend it. So yeah, they will constantly not allow right wing opinions, and they will not allow all manner of opinions. I say this. I say what I would prefer is a regime that agrees more with my values and just shuts down the other values, because that's the only option at this point. So I would shut down things like Hamas, because they're a terrorist group that wants to blow up my country, destroy the West, and destroy our people. That's their view, right? So to allow that is a form of is suicidal. So that would be my view. So, and I would treat them differently from other groups that don't want to, for example, destroy our own country. There would be a difference in my world in those, and I wouldn't maintain it was even totally fair or free speech or liberal, because I'm not a liberal. I think we're post-liberal.
So the kind of the main thing you said there was pessimism. It's like you can't uphold it because it can't be upheld because the kind of the powers that be are too great almost.
No, I wasn't being pessimistic. I was making a few different points, but maybe I didn't make it perfectly. I was saying your belief in there is no total free speech, right? A lot of what we call free speech in this country is just the limits of liberalism as currently defined, and they're always changing and often narrowing. So at the moment, something is allowed, then they threaten the politicians, then they change it a bit, and they say, okay, we're going to change the definition of this and that, and they're doing it at the moment. They're trying to change the definition of extremism. For example, Michael Gove is working on it. So soon we might not be able to say anything even vaguely critical of Islam, and they might shut down on the so-called far right as well. They might shut down on the so-called far left as well, although it doesn't seem to happen because they're more sympathetic to that. But I'm just saying that liberalism, what you're the so-called liberal culture we have now is actually already highly restrictive and in certain ways authoritarian, but just to defend itself. You see that liberalism is trying to defend itself, but against threats from certain groups it deems too extreme. So you're saying you want libertarianism because you're like a libertarian, so that's fine. But that's not the system we're in, right? We're in a sort of liberal, so-called sort of neoliberal system, right? That doesn't allow total free speech. That's clear, right?
Yeah, yeah, I get what you mean, but your view, if you extrapolate it to how a society should be ran, it's based on like what you think the morality or how you think Britain should go. But if you just use that same logic for like Keir Starmer, he looks at your views and he's like, "Oh, you're a far right bigot who's spreading the hate and causing harm." And that's taken down Britain. So he would say, "Oh, well, we should ban that speech," or someone like you would say, well, people like Keir Starmer are wrecking the country. So there's no end to where this logic goes. It's just who's in power, then what?
Correct. Well, if you listened to last week's episode, as I'm sure you did in detail, where academic agent laid this out, that is all that. If you believe elite theory, that is all there is. All there is hoping that your friends are in power, and that's all there is. And it depends if you believe elite theory or not. But that is what elite theory finds. And if you look throughout history, all we really have is different elites replaced by a new elite, and they set the rules. They justify it in a post hoc way, so they do what they want, and then they say this is why we're doing it. Tony Blair did this all the time, and all politicians do it. And yeah, all I'm hoping for now is an elite. As we discussed in that episode, maybe we'll get the Elon Musk elite, which is more aligned with me. The only thing is, the only caveat I would add is that my values are like don't destroy the West. So they are more reasonable in England and Britain, or
But
they
everyone
embrace
thinks that about their own
tradition.
views.
No, but Hamas don't think that. They think they're trying to destroy the West.
Yeah, but they think they're doing that for a beneficial cause of
Of
like the
course.
brotherhood or like this logic just never ends. Like surely we should have a aspirational good way to live. And surely, like for me anyway, I would say, like as what is masculinity? I would say that's about principles. It's about doing things because of principle of doing the things. It's like marriage, the principle of keeping to a vow no matter what. It's that principle I think that is kind of the beauty of the West, or innocent till proven guilty, or everyone has a right to a fair trial. Like I think that's what makes the West so brilliant. I don't think it's like, and yeah, I agree. We do have kind of this liberal order of things, and maybe have a ridiculous utopia of what I want it to be, but I prefer to strive for that than to accept and to play into this. Well, what you said, elite theory, which I don't
Hmm.
really know about, but I understand what it's saying. I don't think that that's an aspirational thing for the country, and I don't think that that is a virtuous way of running things, because there's no end to it. There's no end to the
No,
madness. That's why
no.
genocides happen, I think.
No one's saying it is. Elite theory is just an analysis of how things have gone throughout the course of history. It's not positing this as a moral value. It's just saying this is how it is. So I'm just accepting in a realistic way. I'm looking at what the liberal elite do and how they behave, and I'm just saying it'd be nice if my elite replaced that or someone more aligned with me. That's all I'm saying. But I'm not saying that it's good or any of it's good. I'm just that's so it's not a value judgment. It's a dispassionate analysis. But 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 as for your point, I could be happy with if you said, okay, we can have any group, you can have a sign for any group up, including Hamas, including so-called far right groups and other far left groups, whatever it is. I could be open to that. Um, I don't think it's never going to happen, and we don't have free speech absolutism. But as a kind of that could work.
But surely we
But
should
in the
strive
cult,
to that.
you think we should strive that? You say,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I wouldn't mind it. It's kind of like if Elon Musk, as we talked about last week, does take over and his allies, it's not ideally aligned with me, but it's not bad. He's still very pro-immigration, Musk, but at least he's sort of against anti-white racism, and at least he's pro-free speech and pro-funny memes, and
Well,
you know, he's more aligned with me than Keir Starmer.
interest. I mean, I wouldn't say Musk though. So I've gone off Musk. Used to love him. Used to think it's great. Was very happy about the takeover, and I think it's brilliant. It's happened. Don't get me wrong. Before anyone kind of thinks where I'm going to this, but he's not pro free speech, because there's been multiple accounts who criticise him and he bans. There's been multiple pro Palestine accounts he's banned.
Yeah.
Like he's emotionally driven. He
Hmm.
puts really cringy things about like measuring his
Yeah.
penis with Zuckerberg and stuff like that. Like
You,
he's not a
you
man of
proved my
principle
point
at all.
brilliantly. Hate to interrupt you. Proved my point brilliantly, which is, well, not even my point. The point of elite theory. Musk just has his own set of values, and you're right. He's not free speech absolutist. And Nick Fuentes is not back on X. Alex Jones wasn't. Then people persuaded him. Then he was. But the Musk elite, I'm just simply saying, might be better than the woke neoliberal slash woke elite that we have at the moment. That's all I'm saying. It's not free speech absolutist either, but it's a lot closer. Musk would be. You see, Musk would be a lot closer to what you want than what we have now, probably.
True. Yeah, good point. I was just calling you out. Well, not calling you out. Sorry, that was the wrong word. I was just criticising what you said when you say he's pro free speech. He's not pro free speech. He's
No, he's
for.
relatively pro free speech, but
Yeah.
no one. There's almost no one who's a free speech absolutist. Maybe you, but there's almost no one who is. Musk, like you say, he is far more than anyone else.
True.
And then people call him out. What about this person? What about that person? And you go, yeah, absolutely. He's just simply relatively pro free speech compared to who we have.
Yeah. No, that's
And
a good point.
and to quite a large degree, when you look at the people he's let back on, he's let Alex Jones back on. He doesn't go all the way, and there's no justification for some of the people he's not let back on. There's no, as you say, there's no principled justification. There's no argument for it. Why should Nick Fuentes not be on, or the people you listed,
Mm,
who I don't know about, but I'm guessing there's probably no reason that you can really say other than, oh, they're a bit far, which is just a kind of, it's just a subjective judgment based on where the Overton window probably is. He's pushed the Overton window out, but he goes, oh, I can't go this far with it though, because then people will, maybe we'll get in too much trouble with, he was hanging out with Ben Shapiro at Auschwitz the other day. If he sticks Fuentes back on, he's probably going, hang on, I'm going to piss Ben off too much. He's just making a judgment, isn't he? And so, like, you're right, it's not free speech absolutism, but that's what you would want. Thing is, libertarianism. Anyway, we don't have time to go into why libertarianism will never happen. But what about this? Have you said everything you wanted to say though on this particular incident of the guy with the placard? I mean, we were talking around it, but have you got anything else on that?
yeah, it's just a good example of how broken free speech laws are in the UK, and you see that with abortion facilities outside that. What's happening with that? And I'm sure you spoke about that with Lois and stuff. But yeah, like it's just appalling freedom of speech, and we should always
But were
be.
they against his freedom of speech, or were they just simply knew they couldn't police it, so they had to just do something with him?
Yeah, it was political policing, because if there was thousands of him, they wouldn't have arrested him. They would have, I don't know, blocked the others from attacking him. It was just political policing, weak, unprincipled, undignified UK law enforcement. Shocking.
Yeah, and then it got even a community note about it, which was speaking of Elon Musk and X, and the community note said Mr. Gorbani was assaulted whilst exercising his right to peaceful lawful protest under Article 11 of the Human Rights Act. with no allegation of assault being made against him and no obvious grounds to suspect he had assaulted anyone, an arrest for assault was not lawful. I mean, certainly that does seem to be possibly accurate. I mean, they're just arresting people now and de-arresting us later. I just love that. Don't you feel that we're all sort of arrested until de-arrested in this culture? I think that's just so apt for how it feels. We're all sort of potentially under arrest, but sort of we could be de-arrested at some point. You know what I mean? Like we'll start from the assumption that you're arrested, right? And then we'll review footage later, and we might de-arrest you. It's like no, get lost. You have to arrest me for something I've actually done. It's so dystopian that de-arrest thing. Reminds me of The Simpsons when they had that barbershop quartet and Chief Wiggum wanted to join, and he tried to get back in the band. They all put their hand in the middle. This is from years ago. And they want the B sharps, the B sharp. They all put their hand in. And he goes, the B sharps. And they all stare at him. And he goes, hey, can't blame a guy for trying. And he goes, now you're all under arrest. And he just says they're all under arrest because they won't let him back in the band. Anyway, it just came into my head. You're a Zoomer. None of those words meant anything to you.
I do know
The Simpsons was a cartoon.
Yeah, I have watched loads of The Simpsons. I'm not completely,
I'm giving you a hard time this week because you annoyed me with that gay thing, and now I'm just hammering you. You've set me off.
Yeah,
I'm normally so much nicer and defend you, but you triggered me there, Rory, because that's the thing I have a particular problem with, which is because a girl did it to me recently as well. It's just like you're chatting, you think you're on the same team. They're saying, "Oh, look at this terrible thing," and you're getting involved. Then you say one thing, and they go, "Oh," and then they tell you off, and I'm just like, it just triggers me. I just hate it. But anyway, do you want to do this Lord Balfour thing?
Yeah.
This you like Palestine, pro-Palestinian protester damages portrait of Lord Balfour at University of Cambridge. Everyone will have seen this. They slashed the painting. It was a big difference from normal because normally it's just there's glass in the way. This time they slashed the actual thing, and it was some posh girl who people have pointed out had a bag that was worth about £1,000, and people are saying £500 second hand, and there's speculation, but it wouldn't surprise you. And even Labour have come out and said, Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has said the vandals must face consequences as a result of their action, maybe suggesting a slight change in tone from Labour, maybe or maybe not. What did you think? Should she face severe punishment? I mean, I said as a joke, I sort of slipped in maybe do the death penalty. You don't have to do it once. And then Lewis Schaefer said it as well on Headliners, and I was hosting that time, so I had to sort of tone him down. Simon Evans agreed with me. We were all just like saying these extreme things, and everyone's agreeing with each other. But should she go to prison? Should she just get what should happen to this person?
Well, I certainly don't agree with the death penalty for someone for ruining a painting. I mean, that's ludicrous. I don't believe in death penalty for anyone for anything. By the way, just
which puts you massively against the British population. You're an elitist, really.
Yeah. No, give me all more hate. I know everyone will just hate me by this.
No, a lot of people agree with you about that now because they've been so brainwashed.
Really,
but the British public never wanted to get rid of the death penalty. It was done by a radical leftist Romanian guy in the 60s, was the main guy that promoted it. And it was only officially abolished in all of the UK in 1998, from memory, because there was also, Northern Ireland and stuff. And it was abolished for murder in the 60s. And this was a result of like leftist pressure. So people in Britain have always been pro-death penalty. And now if you poll people still, they're still pro-death penalty, even though we haven't had it for so long, since the 60s, for murder, in cases of, I've said this before, child murder, serial murder, and terrorist murder. But the elite is not on board with it. Just so you know, you can be anti-death penalty, but just know that you're expressing an elitist position that's not in line with the British people. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, just because you disagree with one thing doesn't mean it's an elite thing, because I'm sure there's millions of people who are against the death penalty. It's a majority, but I'm sure it's millions who are still against it. As a Christian, and I know that a lot of Christians who are pro-death penalty, but for me as a Christian, I could never support death penalty. I don't think it's our right to take a life, and I don't think two wrongs
specifically
make a right.
Advocated in Noah, but that is the Old Testament.
But there's also you look at what Jesus did. You look at the famous story of if there's one innocent man, do not attack the village town. I'm butchering it. I'm absolutely butchering it. But there are quite a few stories where God says if there's one innocent person, do not do it, and that's based upon also with the death penalty. Like I think it's 3% of those who are killed in America or executed, whatever you want to call it, are innocent. So if we have the death penalty, almost there will be loads of guilty people who die, but within that, people have to accept that innocent people will die. It might be a small percentage, but you have to have the moral principle that you're okay with innocent people dying because of it, and I'm not okay with that because I don't think anyone innocent should ever die.
Yeah, one rebuttal to that is if you're in favour of having an armed forces, innocent people will always die in military attacks, which are done by the state as well. So there's one
Yeah, but
comeback to that.
that's a way more nuanced because the army, like there's loads of countries have armies, or like Ireland have an army. They're neutral on loads of things. Like you can have an army, that doesn't mean directly you will kill. It's a form of defense. That's
No, but
how it
people
should be
say that.
ran. The
Well,
argument.
to be honest, there's two arguments. The stronger comeback, the military argument is stronger as a comeback to the argument where people say, "I don't like the state killing someone." You go, "Well, you're okay with the military, so you do." But the second argument one could make is the collateral damage of wars like various excursions in Iraq or any war is that innocent people get killed. Although, of course, we were probably both against the Iraq war, but you see what I mean anyway. But we don't have to get down that. We get down all these rabbit holes. I was trying to ask you about this blooming Lord Balfour thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so on that, I'd say I'm a libertarian. Property damage, hate it. Whatever kind of fair. I don't know what the legal thing should be for if she should get jail time. Personally, I would say she shouldn't. Even she should maybe have to do community service for ages or pay loads of money, but prison time for that. Even if I'm sure valuable painting and stuff. Like I don't think that prison for the destruction of a painting, like rapists, murderers, all by all means, but painting destruction, I don't think so.
Well, it's vandalizing our culture. A lot of people saw it as a direct attack on our history and culture. This is irreplaceable. I mean, at least it had more logic than the usual attacks because this guy was actually involved in Palestine. He was one of the chief supporters of creating a Jewish homeland in Palestine, cemented by the 1917 Balfour Declaration. So at least there was some logic. They weren't just throwing glue at Picasso or whatever the hell they do, or whatever, gluing themselves to Rembrandt or something. But at least it had some relevance. But the damage was so violent compared to just like the previous protests. I think definitely throw the book at this person, do everything you can. Otherwise, just allowing it. Trinity College seems to have allowed it where it happened. Everyone just seems to be allowing these people to do what they want. And I'd say that's because the regime is in favor of this, because what we have is anarcho-tyranny, coined, I believe, in 2005 by Samuel Francis, and that's where you punish innocent people, but you don't punish criminals. That's what we have now, because that's what we have anyway. We have certain people the regime favors, and they can do what they want, as we've seen with the two-tier policing. And this may be another example of that. The regime probably wants this, but let's see, because maybe they don't. They might change. There's an indication from Labour there saying that they've condemned it, or at least Bridget Phillipson, suggesting that maybe there'll be a change in tone and that Labour will actually not advocate some of this stuff, which would be smart, but let's see what they do. I know it's also Wes Streeting this week was saying there's a crisis in masculinity. So maybe Labour's going to get a bit less woke on some topic. I'll believe it when I see it.
So what do you think? You said throw the book at her. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, are we talking death penalty or like what?
Well, no, because we don't have that. That's
Right,
not
okay.
available.
Unfortunately for you. Yeah.
So just prison, I guess.
Prison.
Whatever.
How long?
I don't know. What's the punishment for vandalism? What's the harshest we've got?
I don't know.
I don't know
if it, because obviously the price of it does dictate it. Like, what would you agree with, like life in prison for her?
Well, that's not going to happen, is it? I mean,
No, but now I'm not utopian world, right? Nick's fairy tale.
my utopia.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound very utopian, does it?
Yeah.
In a utopia, I would have the death penalty for that
Death
in my
penalty.
utopia.
You would kill someone for like damaging a painting.
For slashing up a historical monument or painting like that, yeah, probably. I'd have to think
They'd
about
be
it.
Killed, literally murdered. Their
Yeah,
life
it would only happen
taken
once.
away.
It would only happen once. Then no one ever do it again. It happened once. Lewis Schaefer agrees with me. You know how rational he is.
So would you kill her?
Would I kill her personally?
Yeah, if you had a gun.
Well, I don't get into that because I'll probably get in trouble for this podcast then, won't I? People will say I'm advocating. I'm going to get like a call from the police, aren't I?
Yeah.
But would I kill her? Presumably not if it wasn't my job.
Like,
if I wasn't.
It's just because if you're willing for the state to kill her, you must really kind of hate what she's doing. So if you could kill someone for a painting, I mean, personally, I could never kill someone for her.
What if they had a really expensive handbag?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, all we are as humans, we have intrinsic value, and our bodies are our most important thing because everything else is kind of mundane. That I don't know how you could kill someone for something.
Maybe I'd chuck away in prison for a bit for vandalism and give whatever the maximum penalty on vandalism is, um, and a heavy fine, at least to pay for that bag. I mean, she can pay for the bag. Maybe I'd fine about, I don't know, 100 grand. No, I have to think about it. I'd have to
Right.
see what I'd do. I'd have to think about it. In general, though, Rory, wouldn't a good old cathartic public hanging occasionally? Think about these people that are like people like raping people on a systemic level. You know, they're raping all these teenage girls and things like that. Wouldn't a good old cathartic public hanging really bring the country together?
No, I think there's something so evil about pain and suffering, regardless, because what does Jesus teaches us throughout the Bible, like what you got a picture? Would Jesus be endorsed at? Do you think a public hanging? Do you think?
Um, don't know. I don't know. I'm still on the Old Testament,
Right,
which
right.
totally would.
Leviticus, yeah, but like, because the
In Noah, they say you have to do it because if you really respect human life, if someone takes a human life, meaning murder, you have to take their life out of respect for life. It's kind of paradoxical point, but that is the point made in Noah, isn't it?
they also say loads of other things which like
Yeah, but I latched onto the bit that backed up my
yeah,
argument.
classic.
It's in there.
I
It's
mean,
in
follow
Noah. I
what
mean,
Jesus did. I think that's the kind of biggest compass of the Bible. What was Jesus about? Love, kindness, repentance, forgiveness, strength. Like I think that they're the kind of aspirational um, things we should follow and really incorporate. And I can't see. Maybe people listening can picture Jesus endorsing a public hanging, but I personally cannot cannot see Jesus doing that.
I humbly defer, Rory, to the British people because I'm not an elitist. I'm not arrogant enough to think. Well, maybe I'm an elitist in some ways, but I'm just. It should be led by the British people. You know, it should be guided by them at least. And here was an interesting post from someone called James's dog, and he posted that he had this graph, and it said the median British voter wants to bring back hanging and nationalise rail. So I said, imagine catching an on-time train to a good old cathartic public hanging. This is all the average Brit wants. And if you look at it, that's all we want. Like they want nationalised rail, they want the death penalty. So the average Brit just wants to get on the train. It runs on time. It's run by the government. There's not all these privatised companies. You probably disagree as a libertarian. You get a nice sandwich, cup of tea. You go down to your public hanging. You see some horrible rapist get killed, and then you go back on time and in time for your tea. I mean, isn't that what you'd want?
Well, I mean, first of all, with my libertarian views of I guess some people would enjoy that as a Sunday afternoon. I'm not sure, but like as a libertarian, I'm actually kind of swaying away from libertarian economics a bit. So you'll hate this even more actually. I wouldn't I'm changing on that. Like SDP would be the closest thing to what you're saying. They might even support the death penalty. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, we need to
nationalising
check.
like
They probably do. They probably
yeah.
do in the cases I've mentioned
Mm.
for the British people. I need to check what they think, but it wouldn't be extreme if they did, because that is the majority view for the certain murders that I outlined before.
Mm.
But what have you changed in economics? Were you a Hayek a meat guy and you've
Well, like
changed?
I've now become more empathetic and more like kind of libertarianism is so individualistic that you can't really have a conservative society with a free market, or you can't have a more traditional backbone and um, aspirational population towards virtuous acts if everything is based on the individual and constant acquiring, and that's what the free market is all about. It's like pull yourself up from your bootstraps and all that. I really don't buy that anymore. Like people out there depressed, disabled, like you like, and so many people who preach this stuff. Yeah, it might have worked for you, but you're not this person. And I think everything in life is about people in perspectives. Like someone who gets out of bed who's depressed has more willpower than some of the top CEOs to actually manage to do that. I think we have a warped reality of success and everything around that really.
They have a sort of survivorship bias. I mean, you're just going to become just a full-on lefty, Rory. That's all that's happening here. But yeah, libertarianism is actually harsher than. There's an argument that libertarianism is actually harsher than fascism, for example,
Mm.
because fascism has a some sort of social safety net that libertarianism doesn't. It is a more dog eat dog philosophy. I'm not an expert on economics, but I have heard that argument made. So maybe you can still be a fascist. But it's funny that you're just moving against all this. There's no, I mean, nothing right wing about you. Yeah, of course, some people argue libertarianism is on the left, but other people say because it accepts inequality that it's on the right.
I'd say socially it's left more, but economically definitely a lot more right. I mean,
But the whole argument for inequality, you see, the argument is that equality takes away freedom. So life is not equal, people aren't equal, therefore inequality is freedom. And any attempt to enforce equality takes away freedom. So I'm of the view that there's no such thing as equality. It's pointless to strive for anyway, and it's anti-freedom. That's my view.
you think
But
it's pointless to strive for equality,
yeah, because it doesn't exist. Never has, never will.
but
I can't be as tall as you, can I? Even though I'm much taller than people on the internet claim, and I'm a totally decent guy, I'm never going to be as tall as you. It doesn't matter how much I want to be. Is that fair? No, we're unequal. You know, you
but I
can
th-
never be as funny as me and as smart and brilliant, and that's just. And I can never be as young
sorry,
as you either, by the way. So we're unequal in many, many ways.
but
I can never be as worried about PC language as you. So we're never going to be equal. So why
I love all
strive for
these
it? It
ripping
doesn't
in as you're
exist,
doing it.
huh?
I love that ripping it in. Just quality. Yeah, I get what you mean, but like, surely, like you want like it's like poverty. People want like no, poverty is never going to be eradicated, but we want to strive to help people who are worse off than us. Surely, or do you not think that?
Yeah, I don't believe in equality. I mean, we don't have time to get into it because
Right.
we've got topics to do. But I don't believe in it at all. And I think everyone the obsession with equality has just destroyed the West. Diversity, equality, and inclusion. But then it's equity. Now, equity. Do we agree that equity is insane?
Yeah,
Equity
yeah,
is
completely. Yeah.
so we do. Equity is meaning a quality of outcome rather than a quality of opportunity. Yeah, but equity is just the sort of apotheosis or the zenith of equality. But I sort of question the whole thing now. I question all of it. Look at it. I mean, diversity. What does that mean? Well, in this country, it tends to mean hating white people, and we say diversity is a strength, but there's no evidence that diversity actually is a strength. Certainly in excess. Then we say inclusion, which is part of that trifecta of DEI. And inclusion is bad because things are only take form by what they exclude. Otherwise, they're just everything. They're just a blob of nothingness. So inclusion, you can't have endless inclusion either. Then equality or equity is not desirable either, especially in excess. So anyway, that's my view. But what about? So we've done Lord Balfour. There was a WPATH thing which Andrew Dawes doing a big show on pretty much today as we record on Sunday. That's going to be massive on GB News. You said you didn't know too much about this. This was a thing that was. This is shocking. This is a massive medical scandal where this group, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, has released this. Well, it hasn't released it. It's been discovered that their guidance was very influential on the NHS. That's certainly the argument being made. The NHS is denying that it was that influential. And one of the things that was included was an entire chapter on eunuchs that advocated for medical professionals to consider whether they should castrate a person who identified as such. This is the kind of guidance that was going out there. And as part of it was a recording that came out with this guy, Dan Metzger, a hormone specialist. And he said that he goes, I think you have to remember about kids. The thing we have to remember is that we're often explaining these sorts of things to people who haven't even had a biology in high school yet. He goes, it's always a good theory that you talk about fertility preservation with a 14-year-old, but I don't know, but I know I'm talking to a blank wall. But then he goes, that's always bothered me, but we still want the kids to be happier in the moment, right? So because of a subjective feeling of happiness, they're prepared to destroy a kid's fertility for life. And where's the adults in the room? So this kind of stuff is coming out. Very, very disturbing. But have you followed any of this?
Well, I've seen like how the NHS has kind of backpedaled on a lot of its stances and what the change in perception with gender, like all of these people coming out now as gender dysphoric and stuff. I know loads of people who, more and more people like non-binary or whatever. And there's recognition that this is a social contagion. I think within this people are going to hate this. Like within it, like I do feel a bit sorry for trans people a bit because there's also this it's such a polarized issue that for trans people, for legitimate trans people, there's no winning. It's either you're like a nutcase trans person who wants to like cut off little girls' breasts, or like you kind of embrace the opposite. But it's sad how like it's become such a polarized issue, gender. Like I'm not a woke person. The fact that I think the whole gender stuff is nonsense. I think gender is your sex. There's two genders, male, female, and you can have, like, if you're born with both, there's the odd case, but you shouldn't base society off that. But I think it's a very polarized issue, and like I feel for like legitimate trans people who, like, yeah, just are actually trans, because being trans used to just be a super rare thing and it was a traumatic thing, but now it's like everyone's coming out as trans, and it's kind of degrade what is to be trans, but also people now on both sides are just nuts about the whole issue, really.
Yeah, there was I'm sure trans people in the past. There was about 5 of them. They were getting on with their lives. You didn't normally made a big thing of it. It was just there. And now there's the activists. Now there's a social contagion. Now there's these doctors who seem to be exploiting it or going along with it in an incredibly disturbing way. You're right, and it's become a massive thing. But now it has to be fought. And yeah, for those original 5 trans people who were getting on with their lives, it could be end up being negative for them, because all these activists, some of whom are trans, some of whom are just activists, have another agenda off the back of it. I think we can agree on that. I don't think that's particularly controversial, to have compassion for a few people who didn't want to get embroiled in this culture war. But now that it's here, you have to shut down things like that, because when it comes to children, you're prepared to destroy a child, destroy their fertility in a way they can never possibly understand at that age forever. It's sick.
Yeah, no, it is really sick, the fact
Now,
that
those people should really be treated badly. I mean, never mind the girl with the slashing up the painting. If you've been involved in sterilizing children, or medically castrating them, or giving them puberty blocks, anything like this, to me, you should be treated like a war criminal. When this ends, we should look at your record and say, these people, to me, are like war criminals. They got caught up in an ideology, they got carried away, and they did abhorrent, sick things to children, because it was socially acceptable in this mad period, and they should be treated incredibly harshly afterwards. That's what I say.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If they've done, but not death penalty, prison time. If the law sees that, and I guess your argument would be then, with the law's biased, they won't get prosecuted. But I think I agree with you. If there's people out there who seriously hopped on a trend and cut off some little girl's breasts, or didn't give consent, or whatever, then, and as a libertarian, it's also a difficult line between the state interfering and the parents' rights, because it's like it can be flipped on its head, where, like, well, what if the state had more control over other things with the kids? Then it's like, but I think that there has to be safekeeping, just like with the safe and effective treatment. Like, that should not be given to young children. And a doctor who recommends that, I mean, you could argue they should. Is there criminal negligence there? But I agree with you. I do agree with you. I think there should be repercussions.
The parents often don't know, do they? And they encourage not to tell them, and
Mm.
so on, and all this sick stuff. And we don't have the death penalty rule. You can calm down on that. That's a theoretical argument. It's not coming back probably either. So probably, you never know. But we don't have it, so you don't have to worry that I'm going to kill all these people. I just said they should be treated very, very harshly, because there's no protection. There's no, to me, it's no excuse that when you're harming children, there's no excuse that the prevailing ideology told you to.
Mm.
I say, no, no. Where's your moral compass? You don't harm children. End of story. And if you do, you're the worst. To me, you're the worst type of person. And the fact that you could do it under the auspices of trendy ideology makes it probably worse, if anything, not better. All right, we've done an hour. Do you want to anything else you want to quickly do? Did you see Biden's State of the Union? I foolishly stayed up watching it for some reason. It was awful. But you wanted to. This is a good chance for you to correct some of the viewers who think you're a Biden fan.
Yeah. Just to clarify to anyone who saw the last episode, me and Nick, like, I do not like Joe Biden. A lot of people tweeting at me, not following me, tweeting at me. You're a fucking moron. You support Biden. I don't like Biden. It's just in a hypothetical scenario where I had to pick Trump or Biden, I'd pick Biden, because I think Trump. People are going to hate this also. This is one of many opinions everyone will absolutely hate me for, who's listening right now. I think Trump's a complete authoritarian nutcase, who's a threat to democracy, and he's absolutely terrifying. That guy is nuts. All the people around him are nuts. People cuddle Donald Trump ballsack 24/7, bend over backwards for him, Nick. All these people, MTG, Carrie Lake. I mean, these people really are beyond pathetic, and people are going to hate me saying it again, but anyway, what I was saying about the actual thing with Biden, it was a horrendous speech. He fumbled through it, absolutely pathetic as always. And yeah, it's kind of crazy how little he has. And again, with the kind of Gaza, what's happening there, that's really, really affecting him. And he's kind of saying we need to be cautious about how we're, Israel dealing things, but he still won't actually kind of call it out, and he's still sending weapons over. So until he actually calls for a ceasefire and stops the funding, his support's going to go lower and lower. But just to clarify, I don't like Biden, but if I had to pick, I would pick Biden over Trump, even if everyone hates me for that.
You ruined it at the end there. Yeah, I mean, you sound like Robert De Niro and Bill Maher on Trump. This idea that he's this. Robert De Niro had this ludicrous clip saying that, you won't be on your show, won't be on, meaning Bill Maher. He'll come after me. I love the idea that Trump's going to get in. The first thing he's going to do is go after a talk show host and then an 80-year-old actor. This is such an absurd idea that like Trump's going to be. And I'd love it if Trump was going to be a dictator, but as he said, only on day one. But he's not going to do it. It was a joke, and the libs go absolutely mad about it. Who's the only president? Correct me if I'm wrong. That has ever gone more than 2 terms. Do you know?
No.
It's FDR, who's the most lefty president, one of the most lefty presidents there's ever been, and certainly a Democrat. Now, some people have argued he wasn't lefty, or he was sympathetic to fascism, I've even seen, and all this kind of thing. But he was basically a lefty president, Democrat. He went longer, and you could say, yeah, it was the Depression, it was the war. But that's the only president, to my knowledge, that's ever gone more than 2 terms. So this idea like, oh, Trump's an authoritarian, he's not going to give up power and blah, blah. Well, he did give up power. He left. Biden was in. He might, if he comes back, if there's a fair election, he'll give up power again. Complete hysteria, madness, just madness. Whether he's an authoritarian, I just don't think there's any evidence of that at all.
So
I think he's a liberal.
No
Trump's a liberal.
No evidence that Trump's
No, I think Trump's a liberal. I mean, Trump's basically a straight down line. And if people were nicer to him, he'd be a complete liberal. The only thing, the left have radicalized Trump. Trump was a guy like, hey, look at me, I'm in showbiz, I'm friends with gay people, look at the black people love me, they mention me in rap songs, and he loves all that, and he was in New York and hanging out with all the libs. And then he followed the Bannon agenda, and he had his own views. He was always very tough on trade. If you listened to him in the 80s, he always thought America was getting screwed on trade. That was his big thing, tough on trade deals and things like that, and wants America to be stronger and stuff like that. But then he took on the Bannon populist agenda, which he didn't fully understand, but he kind of, these figureheads always have someone behind them doing the actual policy. So he went a bit more towards what Bannon would call economic nationalism. But he's basically a liberal who wants, with the caveat that he wants stronger trade, or maybe some trade protections, you might say. But socially, he's always been very liberal. Now he's changed a bit because he's this MAGA thing has sort of taken over. But he's still instinctually a liberal. He's certainly not an authoritarian in any sense. He should have got rid of more of these people in the deep state, but he didn't. Be nice if he did. But I don't see how he's an authoritarian. We've had this argument anyway. People should check out our last podcast where Rory got smoked on this argument already. But you can reply to any of that if you want. Though.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, about Trump with populism and Steve Bannon, I think these are the biggest con men of our time, almost. I'd say, like they're posturing as like, oh, we won the people, when actually they're really not. They scam their own supporters. They really don't really care what they believe. Multiple scams Trump's done. He did a massive tax cut, which majority of the benefits went to the richest people. He did very little for regular people. When you look at healthcare, when you look at all these things that Trump talked about on his campaign before he became president, which were great, and that's why he garnered a lot of support. And I understand why people voted for him in the first place, because he seemed like a legit populist, one of the people. Got in, didn't do any of that. Did a couple things, was all right with foreign policy and stuff. But I don't know how anyone can look at Trump and be like, oh, he's a liberal guy, he's just a regular guy. And there's a reason he's not popular either. Like, yeah, sure, he's doing well, he's doing way better than Biden. But if Democrats ran anyone but Biden, maybe not Kamala Harris, they would be smashing Trump, because Trump's not actually popular. It's negative polarization.
That's not true, because they don't have anyone. Gavin Newsom wouldn't smash Trump. Michelle Obama would be interesting to see. Hillary wouldn't smash Trump. Kamala, as you admit, wouldn't. So actually, who's this person if they ran would smash Trump? They don't exist. Well, it's a hypothetical.
There's loads of lefty There's it's quite embarrassing. I can't remember her name. Her name was I can't remember her name. She was quite good.
Tulsi Gabbard,
No. Legit, she was a proper lefty.
AOC,
No,
Nikki Haley.
no, she was running for Democrats. They
Oh,
refused.
okay.
The complete establishment wouldn't give her any media coverage at all or anything because she was actually like going to be popular. I can't remember her name though. Yeah,
Okay. I can't think who you mean now. It might come to me. But as to quickly on your other point, even though we've already done the Trump thing in a previous episode, the reason Trump didn't do all these things when he got into office was because he clearly didn't have sovereignty, did he? He didn't have power over the so-called deep state. He didn't grasp it. He hired all these other people, bad choices of people, neocons. He didn't manage to take hold of power and understand how it worked. So he allowed himself to be, he was too trusting and hired on people and so on. This looks to be how it is. And I believe there are instances where people actually just didn't even follow his orders. I think there was something with Syria, but I need to check that, where people just didn't even follow what he said. I mean, that's like our civil service. It seems highly plausible. They just ignore what he said. They certainly do it here. So I think the only problem was Trump didn't have enough power. But at least we agree on the State of the Union. I mean, some people are telling me, no, it was actually a strong performance. I'm like, really? Was it? What, because they upped his steroids to the point where he became shouty and had roid rage instead of falling asleep, he was screaming. He just was out of control, and it was very nasty. It was very partisan, notice, which was, of course, because it was an election speech, not a State of the Union. You know, it was a State of the Union in name only. Because in election year, he was campaigning, he was Trump scum, Jan 6, stuff about Ukraine, weirdly. Well, I guess you used to by now, but it was nothing about American how hope or how America can rebuild. There's a few things about we'll give you some handouts. You know, there was sort of handouts for potential Democrat voters who don't have much money or something. But the other thing is they're gonna well, I know that the Republicans are a party of working class now to an extent, but there were all these sort of handouts. It was a nonsense speech. And the other thing is they're going to bring in all these illegals, aren't they, to get votes? I mean, the Democrats actually can't win now. On many people have said this, like Victor Davis Hanson, they can't win on the American people. They can only win by importing illegals.
yeah. That argument seems ludicrous. I think, and also the notion that it's funny when people say Biden's open borders, and it's like, yeah, he's not been great at the border, but he kept in many of Trump's own border policy, and he just pushed through a super. I'm not sure where it is because I'm not that clued up about the democratic process in America, but there's this super hawkish immigration bill that Republicans should be getting behind because it's like what they asked for, and they haven't got behind it because they're so partisan hacks. They prefer to like suck off Trump and what he's doing with the border than actually like do things they actually believe in. And it's hilarious watching all these people in America who talk about these policies like they actually care about them, when actually it is just sucking off Trump every 2 seconds. Really, that's the American
What
politics.
happened to all your Christian propriety? Like, oh, we shouldn't. We've got to be careful with our language. Now you're saying sucking off Trump. Isn't that homophobic? That sounds a bit homophobic to me,
How is
Rory.
that? I'm just saying people.
Because are they women sucking him off or
No,
men?
men, a lot of men.
Well,
A lot
that's
of men.
homophobic. That's
How's that
homophobic.
homophobic?
Because you're saying men are sucking him off and you're saying it as a negative.
How,
Well, why isn't
I'm
it
saying it in
beautiful?
negative because I think it's pathetic. Anyone sucking each other off in a non-committed monogamous relationship, but before marriage, I think is. I personally
So
think.
your problem is they're not married. They're not in a gay marriage.
What we got to get to gay marriage,
No. You're saying they need to be in a. Just let me get it right. If people are going to suck off Trump as
right?
men, they have to be married to Trump.
Yeah, they have to be in a committed monogamous relationship with him.
A same-sex monogamous relationship with Trump, so then they can suck him
Well,
off.
one person.
I'm just trying to figure out what the.
one
Because before you were
person.
annoyed that I used the word gay, but now you're using sucking off as a
No, but it has to be
pejorative.
it can only be one person. It can't be multiple people sucking him
Okay,
off.
so too many people are sucking off Trump at once. Okay, we need to, to get this clarified. Good to get that clarified. They're sucking me off all at once. Should just be one. Yeah, okay. Fair point. That's alienated all of our Christian listeners.
Yeah.
Maybe that's enough then. I mean, what do you think? We've done quite a lot of time, and we've had another Trump debate. We've had a debate with essentially a woke lefty, former libertarian Christian. So it does bring something different to the podcast. Where can people find you, Roy, if they want to spew hate at you about your Trump derangement
I
syndrome?
really appreciate that. I'm actually a little bit nervous now to see how many people do, because before people, yeah. But anyway, you can tweet hate at me at Rory Podcaster. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this will hate me to bits, and as I always say, love you more. But you can catch me at the Radical English Gentleman podcast, Apple, and iTunes, and Spotify, all that good stuff. And thank you, as massive thank you to everyone who's come over, it means a lot. And also the Sunday show, because last time I came on, I promoted the Sunday show. So many people came over from your show, and like when I posted it, straight away they were listening, and that meant so much because I started this new show. It's about religion, meaning of life, what the hell we're doing on this planet. We talk about individualism, the West, money, greed, power, all that good stuff. With a guy called Steve, it's a laugh. But thanks for letting me come on again. Really appreciate it. And even if every single one of you hate me to bits, thanks for kind of tolerating me in your eardrums to actually listen, because it takes a lot to listen to someone you kind of despise and makes you angry. But if you can do that, you can conquer a lot.
All right, well, that sounds interesting. That Sunday show, Rory's heart's in the right place, everyone. And who knows? Maybe you're right and I'm wrong, but chances are people don't hate you because of your views necessarily. Well, it's probably just that I don't know. His heart's in the right place. It might be that I'm older and wiser, or maybe I'm just full of anger and hate. Who knows? But my only concern is we'll lose people after the very very based academic agent episode. They'll be like, "Oh, this is just they go woke on this podcast the week after." That's my only concern. And you've alienated me and my audience slightly, but that's my only concern. I don't mind you having different views, but let's see what happens. It's very interesting. Anyway, it's interesting to get a different view. But Rory's on a journey as well, guys. The thing is, you're on a journey, Rory. You've started off libertarian, now you're far left. You might end up, far right.
I'm
Let's
not
wait
far
and see.
left. The fact you call me far left, there's people who think I'm like a Nazi, and you call me far left. Yeah.
I just think it's the haircut, Rory. This is the Nazi thing. Once you sort that hair, they'll welcome you into the bosom of the far left. But you're in an enigma. You're a
I'm not
contradiction.
far left.
1 minute you're a Christian, the next you're talking about men sucking off Trump. So, we're all a mess of contradictions. But anyway, thanks for doing the show again. If you want to support this podcast, because we're putting out all this content for you guys. A 2-hour episode with Academic Agent last week. That was pretty awesome. So if you want to support that kind of thing, it's buymeacoffee.com/Nick Dixon. Leave a donation there and a comment. I'll reply to them. Buymeacoffee.com/Nick Dixon or nickdixon.net now for my Substack. I've got a custom domain finally. So you just put nickdixon.net. You go to my Substack, £5 a month for all my articles, and some of them are amazing. And it's 50 quid for a year. That's pretty good value. nickdixon.net for my Substack. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And thanks to Rory. And we'll see you again next week.